Hey, how you doing? It's your boy Brogi Naric back again with another episode of TV Aftermath. And in this video, I'm going to be giving my spoiler review of Season 1 of Loki. The series recently finished on Disney Plus. It's available there if you have a subscription to Disney Plus. Going to be going with non-spoilers early on and then going to jump to spoilers. The spoilers time code will be in the description. Before I get into this review, don't forget to hit the like button, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for doing so, and hopefully stay for more videos. So Loki was announced as part of Phase 4, like 2-3 years ago, and it was a result of the Marvel movie Endgame. If you haven't seen it, there's a moment where they go back in time, and the Loki at that particular moment in time, due to the Avengers shenanigans, sneaks away with the Tesseract, the Cosmic Cube, and this show picks up right after that, where Loki has now stolen the Cosmic Cube and he's about to use it, but then he gets arrested by this mysterious group known as the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and they bring him in because they keep the timeline. It's supposed to be one timeline, and anything that breaks off and diverges, they stop it, get rid of it, and it keeps it, lock it down. So they take in Loki, and one of the agents there named Mobius wants to hire Loki to work with the TVA to track down another criminal who is also affecting the timeline. And that's basically the show, is the adventures of Loki teaming up with this group to track down another criminal who is messing up the timeline. And that's a good concept. And I would say early on the show, that first episode when it gave us the premise, I thought that was really great. And as the show went on, I think what I thought the show was going to be kind of waned a little bit, but I will say by the end it does pick back up. And I thought the finale was satisfying. I know some people are disappointed with the finale. I thought this was the best finale of the previous 3 Disney Plus shows we've seen so far. I thought this was the best finale and the best premiere, but the middle part and the story overall didn't quite hit as hard with me as the previous shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision. And I think it does things better than those shows, but it also does things a little bit worse. Because unlike those previous 2 shows, there was never a moment where that excitement for this show hit me. And I think that's because this was one of the shows, when they announced it, I was the least excited for. It was I think they announced it probably a little bit before Endgame, and then once we saw Endgame, I got more excited because I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because I'm like, well, Loki's dead, so is this going to be like some prequel or something? I think that's how it went down. But anyway, and I love Tom Hiddleston as the character. He's definitely the bright spot of this show. Also, the way he was handled is one of the negatives as well. But I was kind of like, all right, Hiddleston's back. But then when the premiere came out, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. You got Owen Wilson here. The cast is good. Owen Wilson, Gugu Mbatha-Raw. I'll save that for spoil. I'm about to say another name. Tara Strong does a voice. Wunmi Masoka, who plays one of the TVA agents, she's good in this. And hell, Richard E. Grant comes in at some point. So good cast, really good special effects, but that excitement for that next week to week, what's going to happen next, I never got to that level with this show, which is kind of interesting. Although, like I said, the finale really got me excited for Phase 4, where we're going with Phase 4 of the MCU, because that finale did some serious heavy lifting for laying the groundwork of what's going to be going on, and I thought that was really cool. And non-spoiler, but I guess slight spoiler, we are getting a Season 2, so there's a lot of elements of the story that were built up but wasn't wrapped up, and I guess that makes a little more sense because they want something to do for Season 2. Because that was kind of throwing me off when the show was going on. I'm like, how are they going to wrap all of this up? But now knowing this is Season 2, it's like, okay, they're leaving a little bit of breadcrumbs for somewhere else to go. And but the show is good. It's my least favorite of the 3 we've seen, but I do think I liked it as a whole a little more, in a weird way. It's kind of weird, my feelings on it. But if I were to give it a grade, I would go a B- or 7 out of 10. And that's a higher grade than what I gave WandaVision, but I will still put WandaVision over this show. if that makes sense. Like my favorite is still Falcon the Winter Soldier. That just hit for me harder. But WandaVision, I think the acting was a little stronger, especially with Elizabeth Olsen, and just I would say more memorable. There was a lot. I mean, if you were on Twitter, the internet was just going crazy about that show. Granted, it was the first one, but the internet was going, I would say, even a bit crazier in another way for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I mean, there are people who really love this show, and I get it. But like I said, there were certain elements that I didn't think worked as well for me. But now I'll get to that in the spoilers. So that's my non-spoiler thoughts. Now I'm about to get into spoilers. All right, spoilers. I'm gonna get into probably one of my biggest problems with the show, which annoyed the everlasting shit out of me, and it all started with episode 2. It all started with episode 2, and that is Loki's power level makes no fucking sense throughout this show, and it bugged the hell out of me. So you see Loki. He's a formidable guy. He's a frost giant. He's Asgardian. He's a god of mischief. He's a god, essentially. Although I know in the MCU they're not quote unquote gods, but he's more powerful than a locomotive, more powerful than your average human. And there's that moment in episode 2 where Sylvie, or we don't know it's Sylvie at the time, is enchanting different people, and she enchants this like big redneck dude, and they're in like Alabama in like the future, like what 2032 or some shit like that. And this big redneck dude is just manhandling Loki, and I'm like, was trained with Asgardians, so he can fight. He's not like the best hand-to-hand combatant, but he can fight. And B, he's like a frost giant who is infinitely stronger than your average human. So why is he just getting ragdolled by this random guy? That bugged the shit out of me. Then there's the moment in episode 3 where he's getting handled by the guards on the train and shit, and I'm like, what is his power level? But then by the end of the episode, there's that moment when they're running. It's like that in shot, and it's like very tight. I didn't like it looked okay, I guess, but it definitely looked like they were running on like a small set where they're trying to get to the ship and everything's crumbling. And then there's a friggin' building about to fall on, and then somehow Loki just green energies the building and then like places it back or rewinds it in time or some crazy shit. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? Like, I've never seen him do anything like that. They don't explain it. I mean, they give a hand wavy explanation later on, but that didn't make sense at the time. And I was just like, that was weird. And there's like some other nitpicks where he's complaining about being cold, and I'm like, you're a frost giant, so how cold is it unless you're lying? There's that moment when he's on the train, he gets drunk, and I'm like, well, how strong is that alcohol? Because you're Asgardian, or you're, a frost giant. Maybe frost giants are lightweights. I don't know. Maybe Loki's a lightweight. I don't fucking know, but it was weird. That episode 3 was my least favorite episode. That was definitely like the low point of the way it felt like filler. It felt like they were grinding their wheels. You do get some character development out of Sylvie, knowing her whole thing. And then that is also the build up to their Sylvie and Loki's relationship, which is definitely one of my other negatives of the show. I joked, and I know some people joked that like, oh yeah, Loki would definitely want to, fuck himself. He would only fall in love with himself. And I thought that was as a joking wise. Yeah, he totally would want to bang himself. And then the show actually did that. It is like, oh, like I like them as friends or whatever, but the Loki's in love stuff never really worked for me. Or at least how it came off, where he was like super simping for this chick, and I'm like, dude, do you want to be, the ruler? Because she's focused on what she wants to do, ultimately with, bit him in the ass later on. But it just, I don't know, that didn't work for me. I know some people really hyped up the kiss. Now the kiss was, I took the kiss as a distraction. I didn't really take it as she truly is like in love with him. As she says, she's got to do, she's selfish essentially. All the Lokis are selfish. They're all backstabbing, and that's why they all suck. Classic Loki is best Loki. But anyway, I will say Sophia Di Martino as Sylvie. I liked her character, especially. I thought it was crazy. Like, she was such a good fighter. I wonder if they're ever going to explain that, because she's a better fighter than Loki. and we know that she was like attempted to get purged at like age 9 or whatever. So I was like, where did she learn all this training? I get she's been running for her life, but that training was fire, and she was whooping some hella ass, especially early on. And Lady Loki, I was happy that Lady Loki showed up, and she's kind of like an amalgam, a combination of Lady Loki and Enchantress, which at first I was like, she's not the Enchantress. But as the show went on, especially when she did the whole thing with Elias, they kept saying enchantments, and I looked closer at her costume, I was like, okay, yeah, she's Enchantress / Lady Loki, which is fine. So I thought it was weird that the Enchantress never popped up in any of the Thor movies, or at this point, so I guess now she's the new Enchantress, I guess. It'll be interesting to see her interaction with Thor, because as far as we don't know if she had a Thor in her world. I don't remember if she said there was a Thor, or Thor wasn't born yet. I think Thor wasn't born yet at her short time of being the child of Odin or whatever. And another thing that kind of annoyed me, which I guess they'll get to in season 2, is they never shown what her divergent thing was, where her I forget what they called it, her Nexus event. Was it Nexus event? No, whatever was her event that caused her to get on the TVA's radar. They never said what it was. And right now, after seeing the finale, I think she did. I honestly think it was all set up by He Who Remains. I think he just knew, because he knows everything. I think he knew, hey, I need this Loki, and I need Loki. And I feel like Loki's thing was, of course, the stealing of the Tesseract. Hers, I don't think hers was actually anything. He just sent the judge after her because he knew he needed her. But we'll see. Hopefully they'll explain it. But I'm starting to feel like he just picked on her because he knew she was important and just screwed her life because, as opposed to her actually doing something. But we'll see. Those were some of my main negatives. So some others will probably pop up. But other things that I liked. You know what? The humor I thought was a little hit and miss with a lot of Marvel things. Some of the humor worked, and then some of it didn't. I loved Owen Wilson. He was great as Mobius. Didn't get him on the jet ski. Hopefully we'll see that next season. He was cool. I love his interactions with Loki. When people were bigging up the whole, Loki, he's bisexual because that paper said he was, which, I mean, it's not a big deal. Most gods in mythology are bisexual if you actually look into mythologies. And like I said, in the comics, he had been a woman before. So, yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But a lot of people were, I guess, upset because they said he was bisexual, but he ends up in a relationship with a woman in this. You know what? I wouldn't have had an issue if him and Mobius had gotten to like a little relationship thing, because Mobius is definitely obsessed with Loki. He's mesmerized by the Lokis and their personalities and how each version is an asshole to their detriment. And I kind of like they hinted at it. They didn't go full force with it like I had hoped, but that sort of, if you ever seen the show Hannibal with Hannibal and Will Graham's character, like if they would have did something sort of like that, but like a lighter version of that, where it's like this guy's evil and this guy's good, but there's this weird connection between the two, I think that would have been cool. I love the whole sort of Hannibal Lecter-y vibe, at least in the beginning, where it's like, okay, this guy's a serial killer, let's hire a serial killer to track down another serial killer vibe. That was cool, but then that kind of quickly went away. But Mobius was dope. I love the sound, the intro and the end credits music. The sound production was really good. Most of the special effects were really good. And the cinematography were really good. And the cast as a whole did a great job, I think. Miss Minutes was funny. I almost got pissed off when Miss Minutes popped up at the last episode. So I was like, if they turn out that this is all run by Miss Minutes, I'm going to be pissed. Thankfully, that was not the case. So the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, I'm a Marvel fan, but I am not familiar with them. I don't think I've read any comic with them involved. I may be wrong. So this was like a new, I got the concept, but I was not familiar with this branch within, it's not as on the level as S.H.I.E.L.D. or SWORD, you know what I'm saying? Or even Department H from Canada with the X-Men or the Alpha Flight. So I had no real attachment to this the reveal that, timeline is, nothing, no one has true free will, is all mapped out. A lot of people was freaking out over that. I've seen this before. It's nothing new, and it usually, gets abolished, which is basically what happened at the end of this. And a lot of people were freaking out over the whole thing where they had the drawer full of Infinity Stones. I think people were deliberately trying to miss what the point of that, or maybe I just saw it as different, where they're like, the Infinity Stones don't mean anything, and it's like, yeah, they mean nothing within the TVA, like outside of the TVA, where the TVA is, and that little pocket outside of the main timeline. All of that shit doesn't work there. That's how their technology works. It nullifies all of that. But if you took those same 80, if you had like 10 different Infinity Stones, if you took those things to the main timeline, that's pretty powerful. But within the TVA, it has no effect. And I guess people were either deliberately trying to miss the point, or were trying to be mad at Marvel for some reason, because they're like, oh, they made it all useless. I'm like, no, it's not useless. It's just within the TVA, it's trying to show how powerful they are. If you take it to their realm or whatever, it doesn't work. But outside of that, it still works. So I didn't really see the whole, people being upset about that. I thought that was a little silly, but yeah. And I'm glad that Casey was not fucking Kang either. One of the things I will say that was surprising about this show is, it was kind of different from WandaVision, where everyone had all these crazy theories, and like the majority of them weren't right. Surprisingly, Loki, most of the theories were pretty spot on. Like, people were pointing out one of those statues within the TVA, with the main one with the helmet. They was like, hey, that looks like Kang. And it turns out that it was a nod to Kang. And a lot of people was like, oh, Kang's behind this. I didn't think Kang was behind this. I thought Kang was fighting against whoever was behind this in a way. And I guess I kind of was right in a way. But like, the TVA Time Masters, I knew that was bullshit. Anyone with a brain, anyone who's ever seen a lot of movies, especially sci-fi with weird bureaucracies, like, oh, the people up top don't exist, or they're a bunch of bullshit. And I knew that was the case. It was Wizard of Oz, the ignore the man behind the curtain type shit. I saw that coming a mile away. And I liked that episode 4, when they finally go into the room and Sylvie knocks off one of the robot's heads and everything. Yeah, saw that coming. But then the reveal that it was actually a version of Kang, He Who Remains. Some people saying Immortus. There's various versions of Kang. They established the variants. I should have seen the variant thing coming, because I was not expecting to see Jonathan Majors at all. I thought we might see his helmet. I thought we might see like Kang's helmet. I thought we might see Kang like a quick second, like a behind the shot, but I was not expecting to see Jonathan Majors at all in this series. And I was pleasantly surprised when he showed up. I was a little scared as well, because he was doing this weird, wacky character, and I'm like, hope this isn't Kang, because I'm not really feeling this. Like, it's interesting, but like, I hope this isn't what we're doing with Kang. And it's like, no, I'm just a variant of Kang. And I'm like, oh, okay, good. So we're going to get evil Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man 3, which is still kind of crazy that he's going to be in Ant-Man 3. But he's going to be a big deal, and I love that. Favorite episode still would be episode 5, Journey into Mystery, where Loki gets pruned and you think he's dead, but then we find out that people who are pruned get sent to this other realm, sent to the void, and this galactic being known as Elias, this spooky purple smoke monster, eats all the variants that aren't supposed to be within the timeline. And Loki ends up teaming with this other group of Lokis, the League of Lokis, as I call them. It was a fun episode. You got Boastful Loki, Kid Loki, Gator Loki, and of course, the best, Classic Loki, played by Richard E. Grant. Awesome. I hope they find out a way to bring him back when they do the next season, because he was awesome. The suit was goofy. Excuse me. The suit was goofy, but he was awesome. And he had the magic powers, and he was closer to like comic book Loki. He had strong magic. He had this sort of posh dignity to him. It was awesome. And he did that moment where he distracted Elias by doing the holograms, the Mirage City. And then this was like a weird problem that I had where it was like, okay, so he's powerful, and Sylvie wants to enchant the Elias so she can see his memories and get past to see what's past him, and she can't do it on her own. She teams up with Loki, and it's like, well, classic Loki is powerful, and we're all variants, so if we think hard enough, we can be as powerful as classic Loki. And then they are somehow able to enchant Elias. I thought that was hand-wavy bullshit. That might have been the reason why Loki could somehow just rebuild the building or some dumb shit. I don't know. It made no fucking sense. But it was cool nonetheless. And all the different Easter eggs there were fun as well. Now, another thing that I think was definitely weak compared to the other shows were the fight scenes. The choreography in this was not great. Some of them were good. Like, I think most of Sylvie's scenes, especially early on, like the first 2 episodes, were really good. But the stuff with Hiddleston wasn't good. Some of the fights later on, it wasn't that strong. I get that's not their main focus, but it definitely paled in comparison to Falcon and Winter Soldier, and even the bits of action when we did get it in, like that last episode of WandaVision. I thought was much better than the majority of this series. It was definitely a down point for me, at least. Other things to talk about here. So I'll get more into it. So the stuff with Jonathan Majors as He Who Remains, explaining how the different Kangs throughout the multiverse discovered that there's a multiverse. They met each other. They were like, "Oh, this is cool," but then eventually they started saying, "Hey, I kind of want to take over that universe over here," and they started a multiverse war, which some people are hoping that it might lead into a version of Secret War or Secret Wars, which I could see that. We might, and I do mean might, start getting some cameos from previous Marvel stuff. I'm thinking Hugh Jackman, some of that rumors about the Spider-Man with the different Spider-Man that are popping up, I can see that happening. We might fuck around. We might see some more of the X-Men, like Fox X-Men. I mean, we're going to see Deadpool. Deadpool is going to come in some way. We might... We might, and I do mean might, we could possibly see Nick Cage as Ghost Rider just pop up. We could see freaking Halle Berry's Storm just pop up just to say hi. We might even fuck around and see Eric Bana as the Hulk, potentially. Just to say what's up, like not really do much, but just we might see him in a way. I could see that going down. They might fuck around and give us, he's kind of old, but we might see Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart pop up as, Charles and Magneto. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's possible. We could see it, maybe not. Maybe some of the people from the cartoons might pop up in live action, or maybe as 2D animation, like a Miles Morales. Who knows? They might fuck around, have Wesley Snipes pop up as Blade. Who the fuck knows? It could happen. We'll see with this whole multiverse of madness. And I like the whole thing where He Who Remains is like, hey, I'm here to offer you two Lokis an opportunity. I'm tired of this shit. I created the TVA because this multiverse war got out of control. I found Elias, I weaponized him, and I took control, created the sacred timeline to ward off chaos. And I had to do a lot of bad shit in order, I had to get people up out of there, but hey, it gave us peace. Even though, the whole Thanos shit was actually planned because he knew at the end the Avengers would win. It is what it is. And he's like, you guys are bad, I'm bad, but you guys can be bad for a purpose and a reason. Take my spot or kill me and another version of me will pop up that'll be worse and just make all out chaos. So it's up to you. And I love that sort of fight that struggle between Loki and Sylvie, where Loki's kind of like, because at first he's like, this is bullshit. But then he's kind of like, wait a second, I can still get power, but I could also have what I want. And initially what he wants is Sylvie, which I'm kind of like, okay. he wants Sylvie, but he also kind of wants Sylvie to be okay, essentially. And Sylvie's like, I like you, Loki, but I want my fucking revenge because that's all I've wanted for, years now, for however long. Because she's older than Loki, and even the black TVA agent lady was like, when she was talking to the judge, she was like, yeah, you want to know, but she needs to know, or some shit like that. Want versus need, yeah, something like that. Like, you want to know, but she needs to know. She needs to know what's going on, and her need, her personal feelings was stronger than anyone else's. And she like kisses Loki, distracts him, pushes him through the door, and then she kills He Who Remains. And he was like, hey, either or is fine with me, but I'm gonna be back, and I'm gonna be worse than ever. And yeah, that was crazy. Loved it. And the weird bit is when Loki, everyone's panicking. Loki's kind of thinking about, the coming of Kang, and he's, he's gonna, I guess, take over the TVA in a way. I'm assuming that's where the next season's gonna go. Loki's back at the TVA. Everyone's panicking because the timelines is just going all over the place. Loki's panicking. And I was a little confused watching it the first time, but like when he runs into Mobius and was it Hunter 15 or something, they don't recognize who Loki is. I thought when he was asking him, "You're an analyst. Who are you? Do you know who you are?" I thought he was trying to motivate Loki to calm down and like, remember, you're a Loki. Get it together. That's what I took it as. But as I saw more people talk about it and I rewatched it, it's like, oh no. He doesn't know who this guy is, which is weird because he's the head of the TVA. Even if he doesn't know this version of Loki, you would think he would recognize Loki because Mobius is like obsessed with Loki and is like and all of this. So I thought that was kind of weird that he doesn't recognize him. So maybe they're gonna have to repair their friendship in the next season. Hopefully that doesn't take too long. I don't know, but I'm interested. I'm definitely interested to see a season 2. As more preparation for Kang's arrival. Can't wait to see what Kang's gonna look like in Ant-Man 3. Now, another thing I was curious about, but somewhat disappointed, was the whole stuff with Judge Renslayer. Because Judge Renslayer was very interesting to me because I didn't know what side she was on. Judge Renslayer, what is it, Ravonna? What was her? Yeah, Ravonna. In the comics, she's one of the love interests of Kang. And I thought maybe she was secretly working with Kang outside of the Timekeepers, or maybe Kang was trying to influence her and tell her that, hey, this is all bullshit, and she didn't believe it type thing, and that wasn't the case at all. And she's trying to track down who's behind all of this. And, Miss Minutes gives her a new mission from He Who Remains. And they're going to do more with her. They didn't really explain much about her, and I was a little let down by that because I was really intrigued where this was going. But we'll get more of that in the next season, so I guess it's fine. But so those are like my main things about this. Like I said, I wasn't in love with this show as much as the previous 2, although I think it does things better than the previous 2. Like the premiere is better, and the finale is the best in my opinion of the 3. But as a whole, I just didn't get into it as much as I did the previous 2 shows. It's kind of weird where it sits with me. But one of the other things I did notice was Kang, or He Who Remains, had his temp pad were like cell phones. The other temp pads were kind of like cell phones, right? And then his was like this round like disc thing that he had on his wrist. And I've been noticing when they've been showing the new action figures for Spider-Man and the No Way Home movie. There's a costume where he's doing like Doctor Strange magic, and I saw he had this gauntlet, and it had almost like a disc thing on it that looked similar to what Kang had. So I'm like, maybe that's the temp pad that Spider-Man has. I don't know, but it looked like a mystical version, but it looked cool. So, like I said, I'm more excited to see where we're going with Phase 4. Can't wait. I think the next movie is what? Shang-Chi. I don't know how the hell this is gonna, build into any of this shit. Those are my thoughts on Loki. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.